Mitchell wasn't aware of the cameras that others were recording with. Living in 2025, where everyone has a phone and every moment is captured, he was about to discover that when he attacked Diana, he wasn't just committing physical assault. He was also recording his own destruction. And when this video went viral everywhere, Diana's true identity would create the biggest shock of all. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, and a comment before we start to learn more about what happened. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of Riverside Cafe, casting warm golden light across the polished wooden tables and exposed brick walls. It was Tuesday, March 15th, 2025, and the cafe was buzzing with its usual lunchtime crowd of office workers, students, and locals seeking refuge from the bustling city streets. Diana Thompson sat quietly at a corner table, her laptop open as she reviewed case files while sipping her oat milk latte. At 38, she had learned to find moments of peace wherever she could, even in the midst of her demanding schedule. Today had been particularly intense, with back-to-back meetings and court appearances that had left her mentally exhausted. Diana was dressed professionally but casually, wearing a navy blazer over a white blouse and dark jeans. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant twist, and she wore minimal makeup that highlighted her intelligent brown eyes. To any casual observer, she looked like what she was pretending to be, a professional taking a well-deserved coffee break. But Diana Thompson was much more than she appeared. As the newly appointed Chief of Police Internal Affairs for the Greater Riverside metropolitan area, she held one of the most powerful positions in law enforcement. Her job was to investigate police misconduct, root out corruption, and ensure that officers upheld the highest standards of professional behavior. What made Diana particularly effective at her job was her ability to blend in, to observe without being observed. She had spent years developing techniques for gathering intelligence on problematic officers, and one of her most successful methods was simply being present in places where police officers felt comfortable enough to let their guard down. Riverside Cafe was one such place. Located just 3 blocks from the main police precinct, it had become an unofficial gathering spot for officers during their breaks. Diana had been conducting informal surveillance here for weeks, documenting patterns of behavior and identifying officers who displayed concerning attitudes. Officer Brandon Mitchell was exactly the kind of officer Diana had been hoping to observe. At 31, Mitchell had been with the Riverside Police Department for 7 years, and his file was filled with complaints that had mysteriously disappeared or been dismissed without proper investigation. Citizens had accused him of excessive force, racial profiling, and verbal abuse, but Mitchell seemed to enjoy a protection that suggested corruption within the department's hierarchy. Mitchell walked into Riverside Cafe like he owned the place, his uniform freshly pressed and his badge polished to a mirror shine. He was a large man, standing 6 feet 2 inches with the kind of build that suggested regular gym sessions focused more on intimidation than actual fitness. His blonde hair was cut in a military style, and his blue eyes carried the cold calculation of someone who had learned to use authority as a weapon. The cafe staff greeted Mitchell with forced smiles and deferential nods. It was clear that his presence made them uncomfortable, but they tolerated him because he was a police officer and because challenging him could bring unwanted scrutiny to their business. Diana watched Mitchell from her corner table, noting how he interacted with the staff and other customers. She had been tracking his off-duty behavior for 3 weeks, documenting instances of casual racism, aggressive posturing, and abuse of his police status to receive free services and preferential treatment. Today, however, something was different. Mitchell seemed more agitated than usual, his movements sharper and his voice carrying an edge that suggested he was looking for conflict. Diana later learned that Mitchell had received a formal reprimand that morning for his handling of a domestic violence case, and his supervisor had threatened disciplinary action if his performance didn't improve. Mitchell ordered his usual black coffee and positioned himself at the counter, scanning the cafe with the predatory gaze of someone seeking a target for his frustration. His eyes settled on Diana, and she could practically see the gears turning in his head as he processed what he was seeing. A black woman, sitting alone, looking professional and confident in a space he considered his territory. Diana felt Mitchell's stare but continued to focus on her laptop, occasionally taking notes on a legal pad beside her coffee cup. She was reviewing the file of another problematic officer when she became aware that Mitchell was approaching her table. "Excuse me," Mitchell said, his voice carrying the false politeness that often preceded aggression. "Are you from around here?" Diana looked up calmly, meeting his gaze with the steady confidence of someone who had dealt with intimidation tactics throughout her career. "I'm sorry, is there something I can help you with, officer?" The question seemed to irritate Mitchell, as if Diana's calm response wasn't what he had expected. "I asked if you're from around here." "This is a neighborhood cafe, and I like to know who's hanging around." Diana set down her pen and gave Mitchell her full attention. She recognized the setup immediately, the implied suggestion that she didn't belong, the territorial posturing, the barely veiled threat. She had seen it countless times in the cases she investigated. "I'm just having coffee and doing some work," Diana replied evenly. "Is there a problem with that?" Mitchell's jaw tightened. "There might be. You see, we've had some issues in this neighborhood lately. Break-ins, theft, suspicious activity, people who don't belong here causing problems for the folks who do." The racist implications were unmistakable. Diana felt her anger rising but maintained her professional composure. She was here to gather evidence, not to escalate confrontations, but Mitchell seemed determined to push the situation beyond reasonable bounds. "Officer," Diana said, reading his nameplate. "Officer Mitchell, I'm not causing any problems. I'm a paying customer enjoying coffee in a public establishment." "Are you?" Mitchell stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "Because you look like someone who might be casing the place. Maybe looking for opportunities." Diana was acutely aware that other customers were beginning to notice the confrontation. She could see phones being discreetly positioned to record the encounter, a reality of life in 2025 where viral videos could be created in seconds and spread across social media platforms within minutes. "Officer Mitchell, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Diana said, maintaining her calm demeanor despite the escalating aggression. "I'm not engaging in any illegal activity. I'm simply working on my laptop while having coffee." Mitchell leaned down, placing his hands on Diana's table in a clear attempt at physical intimidation. "Let me see some identification. I want to know who you are and what you're really doing here." Diana recognized this as an illegal demand. Mitchell had no probable cause to request identification from someone who was clearly engaged in lawful activity in a public place. But she also knew that refusing would likely escalate the situation further. "Am I being detained?" Diana asked. "Because if not, I don't believe I'm required to provide identification for drinking coffee." The question enraged Mitchell. In his experience, people who knew their legal rights were usually criminals trying to evade justice. The fact that this black woman was challenging his authority in a public space filled him with a fury that overrode any remaining professional judgment. "You know what?" Mitchell said, his voice rising loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. "I'm tired of people like you coming into our neighborhoods and acting like you own the place." Diana felt the familiar chill that came with overt racism. Around them, the cafe had grown quiet as customers stopped their conversations to watch the unfolding confrontation. Multiple phones were now openly recording, their owners recognizing that they were witnessing something significant. "People like me," Diana repeated, her voice remaining steady despite the provocation. "Yeah, people like you. People who think they're better than everyone else, who think the rules don't apply to them, who walk around with attitude and disrespect. Mitchell reached for Diana's coffee cup, and for a moment she thought he was going to examine it for some fabricated reason. Instead, he lifted the nearly full cup of hot latte, and before anyone could react, threw its contents directly into Diana's face. The hot liquid hit Diana's skin, soaking her hair, her blazer, and her laptop. Coffee dripped from her chin onto her legal documents, and the shock of the assault left her momentarily speechless. Around them, gasps of horror filled the cafe as customers witnessed what could only be described as a criminal assault by a police officer. "That's what happens when you disrespect a police officer," Mitchell said loudly, apparently proud of his actions. "Maybe next time you'll think twice about your attitude." Diana sat perfectly still for a moment, coffee dripping from her face and hair. She could feel the eyes of every person in the cafe watching her, could hear the subtle sounds of multiple phones recording every second of the aftermath. Her laptop screen was covered in coffee, her legal documents were soaked, and her professional attire was ruined. But Diana Thompson didn't become Chief of Internal Affairs by losing her composure under pressure. She slowly reached into her purse and pulled out a napkin, carefully wiping the coffee from her face while maintaining eye contact with Mitchell. "Officer Mitchell," she said quietly, her voice carrying a calm authority that seemed to cut through the chaos of the moment. "You have just committed criminal assault in front of multiple witnesses while in uniform." Mitchell laughed harshly. "Criminal assault? Lady, you got coffee on you. Maybe you should be more careful where you sit." Diana reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her official identification. She held it up so that Mitchell could see the badge and credentials that identified her as Chief Diana Thompson, Internal Affairs Division, Greater Riverside Metropolitan Police. The effect was instantaneous. Mitchell's face went white as the blood drained from his features. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly as his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. Around them, customers who had been recording the incident began to murmur with excitement as they realized the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. "Chief Thompson," Diana said calmly, wiping more coffee from her chin. "Internal Affairs. And Officer Mitchell, you are suspended from duty effective immediately pending a full investigation into this incident." Mitchell stumbled backward, his hand reaching out to steady himself against a nearby table. "Chief, I didn't know." "You didn't know what?" Diana asked, standing up and revealing the full extent of the coffee damage to her clothing. "You didn't know that assaulting a citizen was a crime? You didn't know that abuse of authority while in uniform is a terminable offense? Or you didn't know that the woman you just attacked was your superior officer?" The cafe had erupted in excited whispers and the rapid-fire clicking of phone cameras. Diana was acutely aware that this incident was being documented from multiple angles and would likely be viral on social media within the hour. "All of the above," Diana continued, her voice gaining strength. "But what you really didn't know, Officer Mitchell, is that I have been investigating you for 3 weeks. I have documented evidence of your pattern of racist behavior, abuse of authority, and misconduct while in uniform." Mitchell's legs seemed to give out and he sank into a nearby chair. 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I know about your illegal detention of Marcus Williams on February 28th. I know about your excessive force complaint from the Rodriguez family on March 5th. I know about your falsified report regarding the Johnson incident on March 10th. And now I have multiple video recordings of you committing criminal assault against a superior officer. Diana pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "This is Chief Thompson. I need a patrol unit at Riverside Cafe immediately. I have an officer who needs to be arrested for assault and battery." Mitchell tried to stand, but his legs were shaking too badly to support his weight. "Chief, please. I made a mistake. I was having a bad day and I—" "Officer Mitchell," Diana interrupted. The mistake you made wasn't having a bad day. The mistake you made was thinking that your badge gave you the right to terrorize citizens based on the color of their skin. The mistake you made was believing that you could assault people without consequences. The mistake you made was not recognizing that in 2025, every action is recorded, every moment is documented, and every abuse of power is exposed. As if to emphasize her point, Diana gestured toward the dozens of customers who were still recording the incident with their phones. Look around you, Officer Mitchell. This moment, this conversation, this complete destruction of your career is being broadcast live to the world. By tomorrow morning, millions of people will have seen what happens when racism meets accountability. Two patrol officers entered the cafe, their faces grim as they recognized both Diana and Mitchell. Diana identified herself and explained the situation, while Mitchell sat in stunned silence, apparently unable to process the complete reversal of his fortune. "Officers," Diana said formally, "I am making a citizen's arrest of Officer Brandon Mitchell for assault and battery. I am also filing formal charges of misconduct in office, abuse of authority, and violation of civil rights under color of law." As Mitchell was handcuffed and led away, Diana turned to address the cafe customers who had witnessed the incident. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your attention during this difficult situation. What you witnessed today was unacceptable behavior by a police officer, and I want you to know that it will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." She paused, looking around at the many phones still recording her words. "To those of you who are sharing this incident on social media, I ask that you include this message. The Riverside Police Department does not tolerate racism, abuse of authority, or criminal behavior by its officers. When officers violate their oath and betray the public trust, they will be held accountable regardless of their rank or years of service." Diana gathered her ruined documents and her coffee-soaked laptop, declining offers of help from concerned customers. As she prepared to leave, the cafe manager approached her with a towel and a sincere apology for what had happened on his premises. "Chief Thompson," he said quietly, "I want you to know that Officer Mitchell has made other customers uncomfortable before, but no one knew how to report it." Diana handed him her business card. "Now you do. And I want you to know that what happened here today will ensure that no other customer ever has to worry about Officer Mitchell again." As Diana walked out of Riverside Cafe, her phone was already buzzing with notifications. The videos of the incident were spreading across social media platforms faster than she could track, and news outlets were beginning to pick up the story. By evening, #CoffeeAssault and #Chief Thompson were trending nationwide, sparking conversations about police accountability, racism in law enforcement, and the power of social media to expose injustice. Back at police headquarters, Diana changed into a spare uniform and began the formal process of filing charges against Mitchell. His termination was swift and unanimous, supported by overwhelming video evidence and his history of complaints. The incident also triggered a department-wide review of internal affairs procedures and training protocols. 6 months later, Officer Brandon Mitchell was convicted of assault and battery and sentenced to probation and community service. He lost his law enforcement certification and was permanently barred from police work. The incident at Riverside Cafe became a case study in police academies across the country, demonstrating both the consequences of racist behavior and the power of technology to ensure accountability. Diana Thompson continued her work as Chief of Internal Affairs, using the viral incident as a teaching moment about the importance of ethical behavior and professional conduct. She often spoke about the irony of the situation. Mitchell had chosen to attack her precisely because he thought she was powerless, never realizing that she held more power over his career than anyone else in the department. The Riverside Cafe incident became a symbol of changing times, a moment when old patterns of abuse met new realities of accountability. In an age where every action is recorded and every voice can be amplified, the truth has a way of surfacing that previous generations could never have imagined. And for Diana Thompson, the coffee-stained chief who refused to be intimidated, it was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful response to prejudice is simply to reveal who you really are.